Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as LevDev, and we are now on to day 4 of spoilers for Gales of Ravnica, and we got a lot of cards. I'm gonna get more quicker with these, kind of like my individual opinions on these cards, because we got a lot to go through, but let's not dawdle, let's actually get through these. One is Blood Operative, 1 and 2 black for 3-1, Vampire Assassin, Life Leap. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target card from a graveyard, and whenever you surveyor, if Blood Operative is in your graveyard, you may pay for your life. If you do, return this creature to your hand. Overall, this is really, really good. Like, this is Black's kind of answer to Graveyard Hate, that they have Graveyard Hate in the past, but all those spells were kind of. You play it if you had to play it, but you didn't really like playing it. But this one is actually relatively really good. Like, it's good in a vampire deck. And it's just nice because you can use that removal ability. You get a free one for free, which those stats themselves are fine, especially with the lifelink triggers. And also, what makes this really cool is the fact that if it's in the graveyard, you can actually bring it back anytime you surveyor. So, if you have any spells that surveyor in your deck, then you can just bring this guy back and then just be able to hate more stuff out of the opponent's graveyard. There's a part of me that feels like this could be a main board card in some decks, but most people I've been talking to about it says that this is a really good card, but it's more sideboard shenanigans. Which that might be the case. However, I do feel like there's going to be a lot of decks in the upcoming mana that's going to have the Graveyard Matters clause, especially with like Gagari and all that stuff. So I do feel like there's an argument to main board this in some type of deck archetypes. Overall, though, great limited bomb too. It's not like a bomb, but it's a good card. Any card that's recursive, any card that you can have that by design can be recursive is relatively a strong card in limited formats. Overall, good card. It's going to be fun to play this in draft, and it'll probably be fun to play this in standard, whether in the sideboard or main board. Next up is the Venerated Loxodon. 4 and a white for a 4/4 Elephant Cleric. It has Convoke, so you can spend creatures on it to cast this creature, which you kind of want to with its ability. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each creature that convoked it. Honestly, as one of my friends kind of said, this is actually just legitimately cool design to actually help encourage people to go into Selesnya. Now, 5 mana for a 4/4 is. Eh, I mean, it's not bad, but it's not great. But the deck they want you to obviously put this in is in a Convoke style deck. So if you have at least one or two, best case scenario, you could probably have 5 creatures tapped for Convoke. If you can do that, then you put a counter on each creature that convoked, which would be kind of cool. But I think best case scenario, I think you're going to be doing a split of paying partial mana and partial creature boost. So when you look at it as a way of, hey, put a counter on a creature that's very powerful, or maybe just one of my bombs, as long as I convoke it for a turn, that's a possibility. It's an interesting design card. I think it's a good limited card. It's not a bomb per se, but it's just a functional creature. And in constructed, if we get a token convoke style deck, this might not be a bad inclusion as a 2 of, maybe even a 3 of. It depends on if we focus specifically on counter synergies and such. Overall, though, it's a really well designed card. Plus, the art on it is really, really nice from Zach Steller. Just the hand glowing there and just seeing everybody kind of glowing and such. It's a really good card. Like, I don't know if how playable it's going to be in the standard meta, but it's definitely an interesting brewing challenge. Next up is the Infectionate Indrik. I think it's how you pronounce that beast's name. 5 and a green for a creature beast. When it enters the battlefield, you may have it fight target creature you don't control. Honestly, this is mostly just the epiphany of good limited card. It's a card that if you're in green, you're probably ramping a little bit and such, and you could probably play out big creatures like this, and really, 6 mana for a removal spell feels bad, but, we have 6 mana removal spells in red at the moment, so I think everybody's going to be on the fair game, unless you're playing Demir colors, let me put it like that. It's a fine card. I would be surprised to see standard play since we have a lot more efficient removal in green and other colors. I mean, Assassin's Trophy. But still, there's always benefits to fight like effects like this, so who knows? Maybe some people might just put in a standard deck of the art alone because that art is kind of legitimately adorable. But I can't really tell if this guy is just getting hugged too hard or if he actually got head-butted, so that's kind of the comedy of the art. Overall, I think it's a really good card for Limited. I would be surprised if it sees constructed play. Next is the Knights of Autumn, 1 in Selesnya, green and a white, for a 2-1 Dryad Knight, so free mana for a 2-1. What's the catch? Well, the catch is when it enters the battlefield, you choose 1. Put 2 1/1 counters on Knight of Autumn, so free mana for a 4-2? Okay, we would do that. Or destroy target artifact or enchantment, that's good. Or you gain 4 life. This card is nuts. This card is going to probably see constructed play in multiple formats. There's some. It's one of those cards where you never underestimate Reclamation Sage like cards, where, especially ones that have versatility. Like the fact that you have multiple choices here of having it enter as a 4-2 is nice. The fact that it can also destroy a problematic artifact or enchantment is nice. And sometimes you just will want to get the life gain if you need to in a pinch. It's going to be a good card in Limited as well. I'm not going to say it's an exact bomb, but still it's a nice versatile creature just for a mid-range Convoke Selesnya style deck. Overall, just a really, really good card. I mean, it'll be interesting to see which decks in constructed. Like some people I've been saying might actually think this sees modern play. I'm not going to say that yet, but there is temptation, especially with Flick-O-Wisp and other kind of like flickering type cards in the meta in modern. Standard, maybe. I mean, we could have more ways to destroy enchantments and artifacts in the future for green, other than the one that everybody uses, so, who knows. Overall, though, good card. Next, a card that can potentially be very crazy is the Okrin Assassin. 1 in Gagari colors, green and a black. For a creature elf assassin, it's a 1-1 with Death Touch, and all creatures able to block Okrin Assassin do so. Wait, what? Okay. In Limited, I think the best way to look at this is just it's a removal spell. It's hard because this is kind of conditional punishment removal, as many people call it, because on one hand, well, actually, no. I take that back, because I always forget that the player chooses how the damage is dealt. So, yeah, this could actually be really just good targeted removal. So, all you have to do is play it, hope it survives, then attack. All the creatures that the opponent controls has to either, if you're defensive, it's really good, because then all the creatures have to attack if they don't want to base remove it by the assassin, and you might actually have better blocks. Or they have all the creatures up, and they don't want to play their bomb yet, because they know that they have to block with their bomb, and then you choose which damage to dealt, and then it deals the lethal damage to a problematic creature. And even if there are ways to buff your creature in this set, which we haven't seen just yet, but if you can make this creature really big, it could have a potential to be a blowout. So overall, great limited card. Potential for standard is definitely something I'm tempted for, but, well, we are going to have to see that. Now, next card is actually from Russian spoilers, so I'm going to say this right off the bat. While it was fun trying to pronounce the other stuff, this I can't legitimately read, and I don't know how they pronounce it, so I'm just going to go and just translate it. It's fun to hear me butcher stuff, don't get me wrong, but I do not know how to read or speak Russian, so I'm just going to go with it is. It's the new Angel Aurelia, I think it's how her name is pronounced. It's a 2-5 with Mentor and flying, and it has the ability that at the beginning of your combat step, a target creature you control gets +2, and trample if it's red, and vigilance if it's a white creature. So, let's say you target a white creature with that trick, it will still, or let's say you target a colorless creature first. It's still going to get the +2 no matter what, but let's say then it targets a red creature, then it gets that +2 and trample, or let's say it targets a white creature, then it gets that trample or a white creature, it just gets the vigilance. And then if it's both Boros colors, it both gets trample and vigilance. Overall, this card, many people have been saying it's kind of the more boring mythic of the set, but I would not underestimate this card. This card is legitimately a bomb in limited. A 4 mana for a 4/5. Let's be frank. Mostly at the time, you are probably going to target herself, which you can since it's target creatures you control, and obviously you control her. So obviously you're going to be attacking in with a 4/5 with flying and vigilance, and then you'll probably attack with other creatures. Within the mentor trigger will go off, so you put a counter on something. And even if you have a bigger creature, then okay, you give it the buff, and then the mentor trigger, maybe it's a bigger creature with mentor itself, and then you can actually mentor Aurelia and such. And yeah, this card is good and limited. Don't underestimate this. This is a bomb. You should pack one, pick one. This. Don't underestimate this card. This card is scary. In standard, the fact that we have a lot of angel and angel-like lords, I do am kind of tempted to make a Boros kind of aggressive angel or aggressive cheap flyer deck. So, and I think this card would actually work just fine in the deck. So the temptation's there, and the stats are right. Like it's 4 mana, so it is playable and constructed. Whether or not it will be able to survive against a removal centric meta is another thing entirely, but the power is there, so I'd say its potential has potential constructive applications. Overall, great card though. It might be more boring, especially with what some of the more exciting cards we've been getting, but and it's probably more boring than the previous Order area, which that one was ridiculously silly. But this card is not nothing to sleep on. I'll just say it like that. Next is I believe it's Flight Legionnaire or something like that. It's a common 1 in Boros for a 2/2 flying haste. That's it. Honestly, this is just limited fodder. You don't really play this in Constructed, even in Pauper. It's more just limited fodder. If you need an aggressive, evasive creature, here you go. Gets the job done, pretty much. And that's pretty much it. Doesn't really see much constructed play. I mean, if we do get a Boros aggro deck, it might see play in that deck just to be way to get evasive, but I think there are a lot more better creatures to fit that target, but who knows. Next is the Glow Spore Shaman. Green and a black, so Gagari for an elf shaman, that's a free one. And when it enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You put a land card from your graveyard on the top of your library. Honestly, just a good limited card. It's a 2 mana free one, which those stats are nothing to sneeze at. Like, we're used to those stats being on a free drop, and it being on a 2 drop is not bad. And also the factor that you fill up your graveyard, which is nice. Oh no, wait. Actually, 2 drops are free ones. Ah. Yeah, you can tell I'm doing this late at night. But anyway, as I was saying, but still, it's a free one that has a good into the battlefield ability, which feeds your undergrowth triggers. And if you need a land, you could put the land on top, but it's not absolutely necessary. You could just use it just to feed stuff into your graveyard, especially if you want to draw into a late game bomb and such. Overall, great and limited. Constructed, honestly, with stuff like Stockpiler's Assistance or just a Zombie Assistant and such, I mean, it's a way to feed your graveyard if you need more ways to feed your graveyard, so it's nothing to sneeze at, but it's not absolutely 100% necessary, especially unless you're specifically in a Gagari style deck. It's tempting, don't get me wrong, but I had to see it to see play before I'm convinced. But still, great limited card. Next, Russian 1, so like I said, can't read it, so it's just a bodyguard, something bodyguard. It's a free mana, free human soldier, and it has the ability that with Mentor, and it can't attack or block alone. So, honestly, it's a good limited card. I don't think this will see constructed play, especially with the factor that it has that can't attack or block alone clause, but this is just a good limited card. If you have a bunch of creatures and you know you're going to go wide, or you know you're going to have consistent creatures with your deck design, it's just a good 23rd card for a deck. Constructed, I mean, maybe in Pauper, and that's a maybe. But overall, interesting card. Next one, 5-mana drop 3/3, another common, but this one's actually a lot more fun because this one actually, as long as you control a gate, it has double strike. Great limited card, especially if you're playing gates in your deck. Well, actually, you probably only want to play this if you have gates in your deck. That's probably the no-brainer on that one. But still, it is kind of fun because it also makes the temptation of maybe making a popper deck with gates and such, which, it's something I would probably just try just for comedy, but I'm not sure if it would be consistent. Still, fun card for limited. I do think this is just a limited if you need a bomb and you didn't pull a great bomb. This is fine, especially the factor that you can give this double strike as long as you control gate. So, overall, just fine. Next, the image on this one is a little fuzzy, but it is the Legion Guildmage. Boros colors for another bear, and it has 2 activated abilities like the other guild mages. Whew. It has 5 and a red, tap it to deal free damage to each opponent. That's powerful. Or 2 and a white to tap another target creature. Overall, if you're in Boros colors, it's a good limited bear. Those activated abilities are more relevant in Commander-like style games, like for the top one, but the bottom one, I mean, there are some times where you just need to tap a significant threat to help get in for evasive damage, which for Boros who are trying to be aggro-centric, makes sense. Overall, good limited card. Probably will see some Commander play in some specific deck archetypes, but it's nothing to write home about. One card to write home about, especially for the likes of Commander, is Lazav the Multifarious. Blue and a black, Dimir colors, legendary creature shapeshifter, mythic, 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, Servier 1, which is look at the top card of your library. You may put it in your graveyard, or just keep it on top, your choice. But its activated ability is Etz. Lazarv becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with converted mana cost X, except its name is Lazav, and it's a legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. Okay, this has Commander written all over it. This is a card where many Commander players, even the video with Tolarian Community College, already has a deck tech on this. Like, this is a really tempting Commander card because there are just some silly, really silly shenanigans you can do with this card. I mean, I could go on in ages of stuff that you can copy that are in the realms of Magic that's absurd. Like Phyrexian Dreadnought. I mean, you can even just put a cheap hexproof creature in the deck to protect it. You can do indestructible creatures, and it becomes a copy and such. One of the tempting things in Standard is I'm kind of tempted with this card to say put Helm of the Host on it, but and not make a copy of Lazav, obviously, but make a copy of Lazav of whatever it becomes. Like, let's say, I'm just throwing something around, like, let's say a Carnage Tyrant, and then make a Lazav Carnage Tyrant as a secondary copy, and not use the activate ability on that one because, oh, hey, it's a Carnage Tyrant, and some realm of making a graveyard deck that uses Lazav as an engine in Helm of the Host. That's more like a janky combo brew that I don't think would work, in my honest opinion, but it's the thing that I think right off the bat. Is this playable in Limited? Maybe? It depends on what type of deck you're playing this in. I think you still play this card in Limited because, at worst, it's a 2-mana 1/3 that Servials, which is fine. But, best case scenario is that this is a card you can play, or even play late game, and still just be like, pump Ets into it to make it a copy of something that probably died off that's a value-based creature. So, yeah, I think this is a bomb in Limited. It's not like a finisher, but it has the potential to be a finisher, which is something. But honestly, this card, it screams Commander. It screams Brawl. It screams, hey, brew around me, and you're going to have some silly shenanigans. It'll be fun to see if someone can get away with this in Standard. I don't think so, but it's a possibility. Next, a card that's probably going to see Standard play, because boy is it pushed. It's the Doom Whisperer, with some great Visit price art. 3 and 2 black for a creature Nightmare Demon. It's a mythic. Flying Trample sits. Pay 2 life, Servier 2. Yeah, I could go into detail on this, but I think it's safe to say for the speed of this video, I'm just going to say this right off the bat. This card's good. This card's probably going to see Standard play. The factor that it's a 5 mana sit trample, is it prone to removal? Yes, but the factor that you can Serviere 2 even when it gets removed, at worst, is actually really good. Pay to 2 life, Serviere 2, filter out your deck more, or even feed into graveyard shenanigans if that's what your deck archetype is. And overall, it's just a 5 mana sit trample. In draft, yes, you play this card. It's a bomb. If the opponent doesn't have an answer to it, you win the game. I know this one I could go into more detail, but seriously, look at it. Look at it. This card is absurd. This card will see play in standard in a deck. I would be totally 100% surprised if it doesn't. Next up is the Thoughtbound Phantasm, a 1 mana 2/2. Okay, what's the catch? It's a Spirit Defender, okay, but whenever you Severe, put a 1/1 counter on Thoughtbound Phantasm. And as long as Thoughtbound Phantasm has 3 or more 1/1 counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. Okay. Okay. In Limited, I think if you need a defensive creature and you do have Serviere cards in your deck, I think this is fine. Because at worst, it's a 2/2 defender, which is alright, especially if you're trying to protect against early game aggro. But remember, this, when it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, will attack as a 5/5 as long as you Serviere enough, so that's something to consider. I mean, heck, maybe you might even splash this in a Mentor deck, or splash a Mentor creature in this, and that's another way to put counters on it. I mean, there is something there. I'll put it like that. In Constructed, gee, I wonder if there was a specific Elder Dragon that, specifically was trying to brew around the factor that creatures with Defender. I wonder who that was. Yeah, you probably know who I'm thinking about. I'm actually brain farting on his name, but yeah, obviously in that Defender Elder Dragon's deck, like, Strategia, what was his name? I'm having a brain fart. You can say it in the comments, but for that Elder Dragon that specifically benefits with Defender, we did needed a really cheap cost Defender card other than the one we got in the core set, and, well, this can work, and maybe if we put Servio triggers into it. So, that's a possibility. There's also a possibility of this maybe in Modern, in the Spirits deck, but that's a complete maybe. So, overall, good for draft, and it's probably going to see a little fringe constructed play. Next is the City Watch Sphinx, 5 and a blue, 5/4 flying. When it dies, Serviere 2. Honestly, it's just a draft card. A really good draft card, though. A 6 mana for a 5/4 flyer is just fine, and when it dies, the fact that you get the Serviere trigger is nice. So, honestly, you're just going to play this in Limited. Constructed, maybe in the Commander Sphinx deck, maybe. I would be surprised if this sees play in Constructed compared to other flyers that we have. And even other blue flyers that we currently have in the meta that's a lot more stronger than this, like Dream Eater and such. So, overall, good card for Limited. I would be surprised if it sees Constructed play. Next is the Darkblade Agent, 1 blue and a black for a common human assassin, 2 free. As long as you Serviere this turn, it has Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. Okay, here's the thing you gotta keep in mind. This card is a great limited card for one reason only. The factor is that we do have some instant ways to Serviere, or ways to activate with Serviere. So, at worst, you can attack in this, and if the opponent decides to block, hey, play your instant Serviere spell, give it Death Touch, and remove a problematic creature. Or hey, he doesn't attack? Oh, activate that ability still in Serviere, because, oh hey, and you draw a card because you deal combat damage to a player. So overall, great limited card, especially if you're in a Serviere style deck and have ways to activate Serviere on the spot. In Constructed, I mean, if we get enough common Serviere cards, I'm kind of tempted to try a variation of Serviere for Pauper. But I don't know if this would see, say, Constructed Standard play or Modern play. It's a thought, but maybe. I think that's a legitimate maybe, and I think it's more going to be in janky style decks. It's tempting, though, don't get me wrong. Overall, though, great draft card. You will play this in draft, especially if you have a lot of ways to Serviere trigger. Next, a really good card they showed off, Mission Briefing. 2 blue instant. Oh hey, remember when I was talking about how you can Serviere on instant speed? Well, here's a way. You Serviere 2, and then choose an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard. You may cast that card this turn. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Okay, I was kind of making a joke that they were going to try to find a way to bring a Snapcaster-like card in the meta, and I was going to make the joke that they were going to make like an Is It card where it's like, oh, give a target spell jumpstart and still pay homage to that. I didn't know they literally was just going to make a spell form of Snapcaster Mage. Overall, is this card good? Maybe. I think this card definitely has potential, because the thing is, as long as the player who plays this have a lot of cheap instant and sorcery spells, they don't mind the mission brief, like to be get a tempo advantage, or maybe even get a good combat advantage to cast a removal spell on the opponent's turn. It's a thought, but the thing that people need to remember why Snapcaster Mage was a bomb was the 2-1 body. The fact that it was a 2-1 body, which can help block against like an aggressive creature, and then you can cast like say a Temple Burn spell or Temple Culligan's Command and such, like in Modern and such. The body was very significant. And the factor that we still have to spend 2 mana to just for what we're paying for a Serviere 2, while good, is Serviere 2 better than a 2-1 body? In some instances, yes, but in some instances, no. No, 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 no. Still, the fact that we do have a way to cast instant sorcery cards from our graveyard still is nothing to sneeze at. Overall, I think this card might see some constructed play. It's good. It's not as great as Snapcaster Mage, but honestly, I did not suspect that we were going to get a card like this. And the fact that it's Serviere 2, especially if you have cards that synergize with Serviere, nothing to sneeze at. Overall, at worst, you Serviere 2 and you Scry 2, so, I mean, paying 2 blue for an instant would feel bad. But better case scenario, in later game, you do the Serviere trigger and then you cast like a good tempo spell, or maybe even a lightning strike or something to remove a creature, or maybe even cast another Serviere spell and such. So, there's potential here, is what I'm saying. It'll be interesting to see if somebody can break the card, though. I don't think there is, but it's interesting. Next, the League Guild Mage. Is it colors? Blue and a red for a human wizard, 2-2. 3 and a blue, draw a card. Or X and a red, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control with converted mana cost X. You may choose new targets for the copy. Honestly, this is, to me, because I like to play Izzet, is one of the more tempting bears to play in Constructed, like in Standard or even in Commander and Brawl, because that X red ability is potentially very powerful. Because there are some spells that if you have the mana sink that you can get an extra copy of, is pretty tempting. And at worst, if you need to use it to activate the draw card, you just use it to draw a card. We'll see draft play probably if you're in these colors because mana sinks are good. And if you just use it as a bear, use it as a bear. And the fact that you have the ability to fork can actually help you, especially since you probably will play less instant sorcery spells in draft than you would in constructed. Now, yeah, in Izzet builds, you're probably going to try to play more spells and such, but still, it's a functional bear. You'll see probably draft play if you need it in the right deck. I'd say it's a lot more functional and sealed. And in constructed, other than commander, it's interesting. Next one, it's just a soldier. I cannot read Japanese either or pronounce Japanese, so 2 red, 2 white, 4 free, and it has the ability that it has Mentor as well. And whenever it is dealt damage, deal that much damage to target player. Okay, this is very good. I mean, this is a really decent uncommon. Like, in draft, I say this is a pick in your draft, because the 4 free and helps you mentor out your Leaker creatures, and even then, if they try to block it with something, they're still going to be dealt with, like, say if they try to block with a free power creature, they are still going to be dealt free damage. So, getting a counter on something in a lightning bolt, even if they try to remove this with a damage-based spell, they will still have to get dealt redirected damage to their face and such. This card's not bad. Also, in Standard, I'll just put it like this so we can keep going. Starfield Extinction with this on the battlefield, you're welcome. Overall, good card for Constructed if you can go very janky, but really just a good draft card in general. Next, a card that will probably see standard play. Price of Fame, 3 and a black instant. It costs 2 less to cast if it targets a legendary creature. Destroy target creature, Servier 2. Will this see play? Yes, because we currently have our removal spells. Some of them are removing from black, but we have stuff like Assassin's Trophy, but we also have like Cast Down, which is destroy target non-legendary creature. Now that we have an option to either sideboard, or maybe even mainboard in some circumstances, a way to target legendary creatures if necessary, is actually great to have this card, because at best it's a 2-cost destroy a very problematic early game legendary creature, and the Scry 2 / Sevier trigger if your deck benefits off that sub-strategy. That is really good. So I do think this card will see standard play. Watch out. Maybe in the sideboard, but there is potential for mainboard play. And do you play this in draft? In sealed? Yes, because it's unconditional removal. Yes, there is the... It has to target a legendary creature to make it cost 2, but let's be frank, if you just have to cast this for turn 4 to destroy something very problematic, like, say, a 4-free, or, say, I don't know, this, you're not going to mind paying 4 mana to destroy it. Let me put it like that. But overall, a fine card. A really great card, actually. Next, yet again, can't read it, so it is 1 green and a white for a 3/3, and it has the ability that when it enters the battlefield, each player, remember, each player gains 4 life. I mean, it's a free mana free, which is good stats, but the fact that everybody does gain 4 life is a cost for this, which is a weird cost. I mean, if you do benefit more off the life gain synergies than your opponent, you might be able to get away with that. However, I mean, I think this is in draft is kind of like your 23rd card. If you're playing Convoke and you need ways to convoke stuff, getting this creature out is a good mid-game creature, and getting the life gain would probably benefit you more than the opponent. Especially, it's pretty much dirtles the game, and maybe that's what you're trying to do in Celestia. Maybe. In Constructed, like Standard and Pauper, I mean... I'm going to lean on no, but I could be wrong, because maybe there's a Pauper deck that benefits off the life gain synergy that you get from this. It's a possibility, but I would be surprised. Okay. Next card we're going to look at is actually a one we already looked at, Vraska, Golgari Queen, as we mentioned before. Good card, especially if it's put in the right shell, but what we're seeing here is actually the Masterpiece version that's going to come from the Ravnica Mythic Edition. Overall, really good art. Still sad that you have to spend $250 on an alternate product to get it, though. Okay, now we missed some stuff from yesterday, so we're going to cover those real quick, and then end the video from here. So next is the Conclave Guild Mage, green and a white for an Elf Cleric, a 2/2. And has 2 activated abilities. Green, creatures you control gain trample until end of turn. 5 and a white, create a 2/2 green and white elf creature token with vigilance. So, is this good and limited? Yes. If you're in these colors, it's a nice bear. Those mana sink abilities have nothing to sneeze at, and especially that top one, which in some instances could finish games. Don't underestimate the green one on that one. And even worse, you can just create a token to help use for convoke spells and such. In Constructed, I mean, the fact that you have a very cheap way to give creatures trample is tempting, especially in some mid-range style decks. But it's a bear, and bears are easily to remove in a removal-centric meta, so probably not much in Standard or Modern or such, but maybe some Commander play in Selesnya-style token decks. Overall, great limited card. It's probably going to not see much play in other formats other than like Commander or Brawl. Next is the Erratic Cyclops. 3 and a red for a Cyclops Shaman. It's a 0/8 with Trample. You're probably tilting your head sideways at that, but let's read the rest of the card. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, erratic Cyclops get plus X plus 0 until in a turn, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Okay. This can have some potential to be very silly. I think this card is potentially a fun Jinky brew for Standard. This is probably going to be the Jink brew I'm going to try. Because there are high cost spells in the Standard meta, even when post rotation, such as like Apex of Power, which is a 10 mana sorcery spell. So it's like, okay, you do that, or actually, that's probably going to be the top end for this. You play Erratic Cyclops, you try to protect it, then you play Apex of Power, which then gives you like, it's a 10 cost spell, so it's a 10-8, and then you can cast other spells from the stuff you dig from Apex of Powers, which then powers this up more. Yeah, I think an Apex of Power standard deck with Erratic Cyclops is a potential challenge Jank brew of the day because I think you can do some silly shenanigans. Now, in, say, Limited, it's a card that's tempting. I mean, it's a 0-8, so at worst, it's a really, 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 really big blocker. However, and the reason why I'm kind of going a little on the card is the factor that in general in limited formats like draft and sealed you're going to play only like 5 to 4 instant or sorcery spells, so the factor that you have to hope you have these spells when you cast Errata Cyclops and then cast those spells like next turn, the timing on that is a little off. I say if you put it in a deck with Mentor sub-strategies or even Mentor as a main strategy, then it becomes a lot better because then you're putting counters and just making this incrementally big using +1/+1 counters. But at least it's a red card, so you can splash it in if you have a deck that does focus on buffing this through other methods. So in Limited, it's tricky but possible, but I think it's not like a pack one pick one unless you really want to go brew around the card, because the power level is there, especially if we have high cost instant sorcery spells. But I think this is more going to be for jank shenanigans in Standard. Next up, and a really annoying card, and probably a absolute bomb in Limited, Night Veil Predator, 2 blue, 2 black for a 3/3 flying Death Touch Hexproof. Is this a bomb in Limited? Yes, pack one, pick one this. Just trust me, it's obnoxious. At best, you get a free flyer that's hard to target and you can get in for lethal damage. At worst, you have something to block against very problematic big game flyer creatures. And that Death Touch, oh, hey, that Death Touch. It's a really, really good card. I even think that this might actually see some standard play in some decks because Hexproof on early game creatures such as this is nothing to sneeze at. Oy, this is going to be a very annoying card. You're probably going to die to this card a lot in Limited. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. Next up is a split card, and I think it's the last card. Oh, well, nope, not the last card. So we got a couple more to go. Like I said, this is going to take a little bit. Integrity, hybrid meta, red or white. Target creature gets +2/+2/2 in a turn, or intervention. 2 and Boros, intervention deals free damage to a target to any target, and you gain free life. Honestly, this is just a really good limited card. This is removal. This is a combat trick. Whatever you need, you'll probably use it on that instance. It does kind of stink that Lightning Helix is now a 4-mana spell, but the fact that it does any target, and you have the ability to, if you don't want to use it as a Lightning Helix, you can just use it as a good combat trick. Nothing to sneeze at. Good limited. Probably might see some constructed play in the right decks, especially if there's any that has life gain synergies. Something to consider, but it'll be interesting. Okay, next is the Gagari Raiders, free and a green for a haste 0/0, but has undergrowth. It enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counters on it for each creature card in your graveyard. Limited play only. You want to make sure you're in the deck that wants to play this card, so you want to fill up your graveyard, you want to have creatures, and then you actually get a very beneficial creature. The main con is it doesn't have that much great evasions, unless you have ways to give it evasion, so, but still, this could potentially be a very powerful 4-drop in the right decks. So, good and limited. I don't think you'll see constructed play, but I've been wrong before. Nets, never happened. 2 and a black for sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose an online card from that player's graveyard or hand and exile it. Honestly, just a really good spell for potentially standard if we have a lot of graveyard mana shenanigans, good sideboard card. In draft, you can play this in sealed, but in draft it's more like a 23rd card. If your draft went really bad, you're probably just going to play this to help you remove some more problematic threats, and even then I think it's more sideboard. In standard though, potential sideboard if graveyard shenanigans are going to be a thing. Next, Lava Coil. 1 in a red, sorcery. Deals 4 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Exile it instead. Will this see play? Abso-freaking-lutely, and the main reason why is because there's a lot of problematic creatures at 4 toughness that getting an early game removal spell, such as this, would help you out a lot. I'm thinking like stuff like Steel Leaf Agent, or like Rekindling Phoenix and such. Just destroying those very early game with a very cheap spell. Good card. You're probably going to play it. And the last one before we are done for tonight is Invert and Invent. Invert. Remember, this is a rotted, so I'm going to say the eroded version. Switch the power and toughness of each of up to 2 target creatures until end of turn. It doesn't say that on this text, but it will say that as an errata, so keep that in mind. And then there's an event for red and a blue for search your library, for an instant and or sorcery card, and then put them into your hand and then shuffle your library. Overall, Unlimited, you're probably just going to use Invert a majority of the time because it's a really good combat trick. But Invent is not bad if you need to fish out for a powerful bomby spell. So Unlimited, it's probably going to be very good in the right decks. Keyword, right decks. Standard, yeah, you'll probably see play in Standard. Especially if there's a Izzet style kind of cast a lot of spells deck. It's good to have ways to tutor out spells. And just this combat trick in general is just really good. Something you can play early game or something you can play late game. And both of them are at instant speed is really, really nice. Whew, okay, is that all of them? Yeah, I think that's all of them. Hopefully Friday is going to be a lot shorter video since they don't spoil that many cards on Friday, so good to know. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. This is LevDev, signing out.